Welcome to the Science of Kindness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Culver, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. We share real stories and give you tips, tricks, and strategies to fit kindness into your life. Enjoy and know that you are a bright light in this world. Welcome back to another episode of the Science of Kindness. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today we're talking about shame. And I know that's a heavy topic, and oftentimes it's ones that we probably avoid because we don't want to talk about it. And I was writing a book recently, and I had a whole chapter on shame, and I was like, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about shame. So I shared in an earlier episode that I come from a divorced family. My parents divorced when I was 6, and so I grew up having 4 parents. I really thought that was the normal. It was my normal. My brother and I, we just normalized that. And so my stepmom, Charlotte, was an avid yard sale, garage sale person. And I remember growing up as a child that on Friday nights, we would get ready by gathering all of our coins. She'd go to my dad and ask for money because we were going to go to breakfast the next morning. So like yard sales were a big family thing. What's hilarious though is my brother's not a morning person. And so my stepmom always wanted to be up bright and early, 5:30, 6:30, first one out the door to be at the yard sales because we were going to find the good stuff, right? All the good things were going to be there the earlier you went. I was up because I was energetic. I think it stems from the farm days of having to be up super early, but I was up and excited because I also knew that we were getting a good breakfast. Like I knew that a good Southern country breakfast was on the other side of these yard sales. And so I share that vulnerably just because it sets the scene for kind of the story I'm going to share. So my dad lives in North Carolina in Fayetteville, just a couple miles from a Coliseum that's down the road. And one weekend, much after I had grown up, my stepmom had gotten up to go to this yard sale. Now, mind you, my stepmom had a stroke when I was growing up, so she had no short-term memory and no feeling on her right-hand side, and that's really important for this part of the story. So as she makes her way to the Coliseum, she gets there and she's super excited. She's super excited to walk into the space, and when she does, she thinks she's arrived on the scene to this grandest yard sale. She's so excited because when she walks into the doors, this lady greets her and hands her this pamphlet. And she's like, oh my gosh, they have a map. They have an outline of all these places in this yard sale where you can find these things. As my stepmom is looking around, now mind you, she's wearing khaki shorts, a tank top, black flip-flops. She looks around and she sees all these folks wearing super nice clothes, suits and dresses. And she's like, these people are dressed up for this yard sale. So she finds someone who's standing near the door and she said, ma'am, can you help me? And the lady was kind enough to say yes. And so my stepmom asked her, I'm at this yard sale. Where am I? And the lady looks at her confused. She goes, yard sale? She said, ma'am, you're at Fayetteville Tech Community College graduation. And my stepmom in true Charlotte form said, oh, hell. And started to figure out where she was. Now, I tell you that she had short-term memory loss because she drove, she passed away in 2023, God rest her soul, but she drove a green Volkswagen Beetlebug. And when she walked outside, she couldn't remember where she parked her car. And so she had found some officers, some police officers that were in the parking lots, patrolling the space to ensure safety. And she went up to them and asked them to help her find their car. And they go, ma'am, what do you drive? So she told him a Toyota Camry, which was her old car. So it's hysterical in itself that we didn't have the right car. But the officers were trying to help point her in the right direction, but she asked them, and so confidently, I can hear it too, she asked them, could they put her in the back of their cop car and drive her around until she found her car? And they said, man, that's not legal unless we arrest you. She goes, well, put some handcuffs on me, drive me around and until I find my car. And I loved the problem-solving solution conversation right there on the spot. I think that's so powerful. And they did not do that. What's hysterical is a lot of us probably would have had shame or never even had the audacity to ask that question, but she did. So after not having success and them helping her find her car, she walked around, she was looking, she called my dad, she called her friend Donnie, all of these things. And the story makes me laugh because it really echoes how confusion and disorientation can turn into frustration, but it can easily slip into shame. And I think it's one of the most powerful emotions that we experience, right? My stepmom in that moment could have selected to go to a space of shame. And I know that she was frustrated because she wasn't able to find her car in the immediate. And she was looking for some problem solving and some solution aspect in those officers, but they didn't give it to her, right? And I think that in a lot of our aspects of our lives, shame would have come rampant there. She chose, because of some adversities that she had to experience, to navigate it a different way. And I find it very comical. One, that she thought she was at the yard sale at the Fayetteville Tech Community College. One, I would have been embarrassed and shamed there, not her, right? She was so excited that she was there and she had this map and this program. And then I think too, I would have found shame in asking the officers, hey, can you drive me around in the cop car? Not her, right? She was so solution oriented. And I think that shame is such a powerful emotion. Sometimes we think it looks a certain way, but it easily could be as someone honks at you at a red light. Not that you necessarily are shameful for not moving your car at a red light, but it's the fact that you are embarrassed that somebody else has noticed that you haven't moved, right? So you can internalize a voice of, I'm not good enough. This is shameful. It could be the same that you call a friend and they don't answer your phone call. And so when that happens, you could internalize, they don't want to talk to me. And so it begins the spiral of shame. It's an all too familiar feeling that we navigate that we don't necessarily talk about. And when I was writing the book, and really about the chapter of shame, I was thinking about this experience in elementary school. I was in 5th grade. And then during my time of a divorced family, I went to 3 elementary schools. I went to kindergarten in North Carolina. We transitioned to Tulsa when I was in 1st grade. So I went to 1st and 2nd grade at Hoover Elementary in Tulsa Public Schools. And in 3rd grade through 5th grade, I went to Salk Elementary in Tulsa Public Schools. So I transitioned a lot in elementary. And so in 5th grade, I had been there in my life the most consistent, right? Like elementary school. So in 5th grade, you couldn't tell me anything. I was head of safety patrol. I was on student council. I was planting trees. Like I thought I had reached my prime. Mind you, I'm like 11, right? 5th grade. Yeah, I've done the dang thing. And so I felt like I carried myself with a lot of confidence and I had figured it all out. Not to foreshadow anything, that middle school and high school were some of the hardest years of my life. And so my mom was a really hardworking parent. She still is, works very hard on the farm and in the small town of where they live. But it was really rare for my mom to bring me lunch to school. Like she would either pack our lunch or gave us money to eat lunch at school, but her to bring us some sort of fast food or some kind of meal from the outside was really uncommon. And I remember one day she walked into the elementary school cafeteria and I was like, oh my gosh, she's here. Like she took a day off. She surprised me. Well, what I didn't know what was actually coming. So earlier that week, I was in class with teachers and I had mouthed off. And yes, before you even ask, I got talks too much on my report card for 12 years. So I knew like talking, being a public speaker probably was going to be in my life somehow. I didn't know how, when, or where, but I knew that it might play a part in my life as I got that, on my report card for 12 years. But nevertheless, I thought it was just harmful. I thought I was just being humorous, thought I was being playful when I was joking around with the teacher, but I guess not. I guess my talking back and sassy attitude in 5th grade got my mom a phone call. So she showed right up on the scene. And after lunch, now hear me, like I want to pause here just for a second. My mom is my biggest cheerleader. She is my biggest advocate. She still tells me today, she's like how proud of me she is. And I know she was proud of me then too. But at the same time, she was teaching a lesson. So going back to that 5th grade, I can still remember my mom staying with me because in every classroom I had to stand up and say, I don't know how to behave in school. And so my mom's come to class with me, right? I didn't get to go to the electives. I didn't get to go to the special classes. And I remember standing in the science lab with all the classmates looking at me and I have tears coming down my face and I'm telling folks I don't know how to behave in school and I'm 11, right? It taught me a lesson. You absolutely believe that for sure. But it also created a large sense of shame in myself in that aspect that I was naming that I didn't know how to behave. And I didn't have the tools at 11 or 10 or 11 to navigate shame in such a way that I did internalize it as that I'm not good enough, right? Or I did internalize that I am as a problem. Unlike guilt, which says I did something bad, shame says I am bad. So when we have those moments where we're having to be really vulnerable and we don't have tools or the strategies or equipments to navigate them, they can show up in different ways because this internal voice or this internal dialogue is saying, I'm bad, right? Like I'm bad. I'm not good enough. I'm a problem. And it doesn't always look up as just as simple as that. Perhaps it's missing a deadline, right? Maybe you've internally said, I can't believe I failed again. I'm irresponsible. Guilt focuses on the behavior that would say, I didn't finish the report on time. I need to plan better next time. It's important that when we have these moments that we don't go down the shame spiral, that we are able to identify, am I navigating a situation of guilt or is it a situation of shame? And how can I get out of the shame spiral, right? The other thing is when we snap at a coworker, it might sound like I'm such a terrible person for losing my temper, but guilt says I shouldn't have spoken so harshly. I apologize and try to stay calm next time. Right? Or when you forget a friend's birthday, maybe you internalize and say, I'm a bad friend. I always mess things up. But guilt says, I forgot to call her. I'll reach out to her and make it up to her. There's ways in which we understand that. And understanding that distinction is so important because shame interrupts positive emotions, replacing them with a sudden awareness of what we fear, of what we don't want to admit to ourselves. And it can show up in so many ways. But shame leads to that anger, that sadness, that anxiety, that disgust, that loneliness, frustration, resentment. And unfortunately, shame can even look as a form of rage. It fuels all the negative self-talk and can create a self-perpetuating cycle. So when shame is partnered with stress, it fuels that fight or flight response that we talked about in the last episode. It is that space of we are looking for some sort of survival, right? So we have to be identifying ways in which shame is showing up in our respective life. Maybe it's not you standing up in the cafeteria or with your colleagues desk saying that you don't know how to behave at school or work. But maybe it is that you missed a friend's birthday. Maybe it is that you had to cancel on someone for a last minute thing and you've internalized it as some way. It's okay to carry guilt. It's okay to name shame. But the reality is when we recognize shame or we recognize guilt, we have to work through it in a way in which we come out on the other side. Because there's 4 common compass points of shame that psychiatrist Donald Nathanson says that we try to use to protect ourselves from shame. It's withdrawal. We isolate, we run, we hide, we avoid, right? We attack ourselves. We internalize blame. We have negative self-talk, or we have a low self-esteem. We attack others by lashing out, projecting, or even blaming them. We avoid others with numbing ourselves. We deny situations. We lean into addictions of alcohol, drugs, or other things. Maybe it's addiction of doom scrolling or addiction of shopping or addiction of coffee. So we find something that we fixate on and that becomes an addiction to replace something that we're feeling. It also can be some kind of thrill-seeking adventure that we're on. So everyday situations can trigger these responses. And that's why it's super important that when we feel angst, we feel anxiety, we feel a certain way, we begin to name the emotions. I always give the example that when you would use your finger to touch a stove, it would immediately tell you that it's hot. Or in my case, just a couple days ago, I was slicing some potatoes and I sliced 2 fingers. It was telling me that the knife was sharp. Our emotions are the exact same way. They're telling us something should we choose to listen to it. It's our responsibility to not see them as an enemy, but to truly see them as signposts. How can we use our emotions to guide us in the right direction? Brene Brown calls shame the swampland of the soul. It thrives in secrecy, in silence, and when shame is left unchecked, it becomes the breeding ground of false narratives. I talked about my partner, Dr. Kelly B. Forbes, I believe in the first 2 episodes, and I know definitely in episode 1. He and I have been together now. It's 2026 for 13 years, and Kelly has always been immersed in the arts. He's a former singer and dancer on the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. He appeared internationally in an international Toyota Corolla magic show. He was even named Mr. Gay Oklahoma in 2011. He's incredibly talented inside and outside of education. And so I think it's important that I pause to highlight that we've grown a lot, we've navigated a lot, but there's been a lot of low moments and high moments, right? And I'm really proud of the things we've done together. We've learned together, we've grown together. And I share all of this because it frames a really important moment in my life. A few years ago, after the pandemic, I was encouraged to interview for a head principal position in a suburban district. During the process, I was receiving incredible affirmations. One of the executive team members paused mid-interview to say how impressed they were with me and the plans that I had. An assistant superintendent paused and said they appreciated my vision, and 2 of the teachers on the panel even appreciated the work that I brought forward. But 2 teachers, after the interview, sent me an email, and they said in their email that they sent from their personal email addresses, "I loved meeting you. I hate that some people just can't be on the right side of history." Days later, I got the call, and I was told that they had selected somebody else. The words from those emails on the right side of history stayed with me. I'll never know exactly what was meant by those words, but I definitely have my perspective and my assumption. And rejection sparks shame. So, in that moment of receiving the call and navigating that really hardship moment of the right side of history, those feelings of standing up in fifth grade, standing up saying, I'm not good enough, all resurfaced. And immediately the self-attack began, and suddenly I was trapped. Mark Manson calls this the cycle from feedback loop of hell. We feel bad about feeling bad, and the only way out, Mark Manson suggests, is acceptance, to face the struggle and imperfection as part of the human condition rather than something to hide. This shift, this mindset understanding, recognized does not erase shame, but it does disarm shame's power. Now listen, that sting of rejection was not just professional. It was personal. It carried a deep shame and something that I had to work out to say was not a reflection of my ability. It is not who I am. Brene Brown says that we are not the stories in our head. And in moments of that nature, moments in the fifth grade cafeteria, in moments of life, it's easy to go down that rabbit hole of saying, I am this story. I've created this story. This is who I am, right? And that's what Brene Brown says we are not. Unchecked shame erodes our happiness, and it increases our worry, and it drains our satisfaction. It convinces us that we are not worthy of something, that we are not enough of something, which actually is opposite. Yes, it is not a one and done thing. It's not something that we check in compliance boxes. It's like a muscle we have to work on every single day, and it takes time. I learned that from my own experiences. It took time to heal, but eventually I realized this. My value isn't determined by one interview, one decision, or one system. That experience taught me that shame does not get to write the final chapter or any chapter of my story. And of course, healing did not happen overnight. It came through reflection. It came through therapy. It came through prayer. It came through journaling. It came through small acts of giving and receiving kindness internally and externally to recognize the value and the gifts that I bring to this world. And I share this ultimately so vulnerably, so raw, to say you too bring gifts to this world. So no matter if you're navigating a moment of shame, moment of guilt, a moment of distress, moment of rejection, I want you to know that you've got to be kind to your mind. Don't create stories in your mind that are a false narrative. Don't believe the words that you tell yourself. Make sure that you're lifting yourself up. If you're looking for a simple way, one of the best ways in which I encourage people to remember the value that they bring to the world is to write 18 affirmations. And I recognize you probably already did a big, at 18. I hear it all the time, and I'm grateful. I really am grateful when people do the huff and puff, the distress moment, because it reminds me of the value that is in the activity. When we have to put that huff and puff away and we have to focus on our affirmations and the value that we bring to the space, it helps us realign our mind. So if you've never written an affirmation, it starts with the words I am, followed by positive words. If you can't write 18 immediately, that's okay. Make it a process. Start with 3, then keep going. But no matter what, you want to remind yourself that you are amazing. You are a gift to this world. I want to flash back to that Coliseum day with my stepmom and those police officers. My stepmom could have been rooted in shame, like we had talked about in the earlier part of this episode. And she could have done whatever she needed to get those officers to take her to that car. And she could have been embarrassed and shameful or carried guilt for navigating that in such a way. But she chose to be bold, courageous, and audacious. And I think that's what she encouraged all of us to do. That no matter what doors close, no matter what friendships end, no matter what experiences open us up to vulnerability, no matter where we're having to navigate life walking in faith, we have to be kind to our mind. And we have to know that everything is working out for us, not to us. I was at a coffee shop recently. I was going through the drive-through to get a coffee that morning. And when I got to the window, I had paid the cashier, and the barista asked me, hey, was your order supposed to be hot? And I said, yes. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry they made it wrong. And I said, that's okay, no worries. She said, well, you pull around to the front, we'll bring it out to you. I said, perfect. So I was waiting there in the front of the coffee shop, and she came out and she was carrying the hot coffee, and I said, thank you so much. She said, absolutely. Do you have a second? And I said, I do. And she said, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Absolutely." She said, "We always love when you come to the coffee shop because you're always so kind." And someone must have been cutting some onions in my car because there was some tears or some water welling up in my eyes. And I thought about for a moment just how those small moments of kindness that we give out into the world really change our perspective and our internal dialogue. And so if you're struggling with being kind to your mind, first and foremost, wiggle your toes. Come right now back to the present. Know that you're worthy. You're worthy of all the love and light, and that you are a gift to this world. Second, give out kindness today. Kindness is not only good for you, as a doer, not only you for as a receiver, but it's also good for the observer. So when someone sees or witnesses or experiences kindness, they are 75% more likely to give kindness out into the world. And it doesn't have to be the grandiose things. It can be a bold, courageous act where you advocate for yourself. It could be holding the door for a stranger. It could be getting the item off the top shelf or getting an item off the low shelf. It could be calling or texting someone you haven't thought about in a while. It could be saying, "I'm sorry," or saying, "I'm thinking of you," right? It doesn't have to be something that costs money. And it also could be taking a warm bubble bath or sitting in silence in the dark for yourself, because you are someone too. Every day, friend, may not be a great day, but there is something great in every single day. And so I challenge you, don't go down the shame spiral. Don't stay rooted in the story that you've created in your head that's a false narrative, and don't stay rooted in guilt. Because the reality is, when we focus on light in times of darkness, anything is possible. And I know that a lot of us are walking in darkness because 7 in 10 Americans are living in a chronic state of stress. And we're looking for folks to be the light. And so, friends, I challenge you. If you can't find the light, be the light. And sometimes the light you're looking for is the one that you carry on the inside. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been a joy to share this space with you. As always, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share it out, all the things. Make sure you're following us on social media at Dr. Chris Culver or on my website, www.drchrisculver.com. And I can't wait to see you here on the next episode. All my best always, with kindness. Bye, friends.
The Science of Kindness podcast is hosted by Dr. Chris Culver. Our editor is Billy Mark. Our executive producer is Jake Doberens. This podcast was created in conjunction with Theophany Media.